أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. The topic that I want to talk about today is a very comprehensive topic, and it is a topic about how do we find peace. Number one, how do we find guidance? How do we have internally tranquility, internally? And the answer actually is one essential thing, and that is that in Arabic it's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says لِيُكَبِّرَ اللَّهِ. Now what does that mean? لِيُكَبِّرَ اللَّهِ. You know how every time the adhan goes off and every time the aqama goes off, there's something that is repeated over and over. What is that? What is the essential part of the adhan? The first part. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar is what this discussion is going to be about. What does Allahu Akbar mean? Allahu Akbar means, does anyone know what it means? God is great. So it does not just mean God is great. It's greater. Now this is important. This is so important because a lot of things can be great. My coffee can be great, right? A piece of chocolate cake can be great, right? A friend can be great. Allah's not just great. He is Akbar, which means He is greater. Now I want to ask you something. What is He greater than?
Everything.
Absolutely everything. And that is why when we say Allahu Akbar, I want you next time you hear the adhan to reflect on that. What are you saying when you say Allahu Akbar with your tongue, and what are you saying when you say Allahu Akbar with your heart? You are saying that Allah is not just great, but Allah is greater than every other thing. Everything. How does that play out in my life? What does that look like? And what is the result of a person that in fact yukabbir Allah? Yukabbir Allah means that he makes or she makes Allah greater in their life than everything else. Yukabbir Allah. It means that you have made Allah greater than everything else in your life. I can tell you right now that you will solve all your problems through doing that. You get what I'm saying? That's a very deep statement. You will solve your problems by doing that. Because the reason why we have that constriction, that agitation inside, the anxiety, where does it come from? Where does it come from? It comes from a lack of making Allah greater. How does that play out practically? Well, when we are afraid, for example, when we are afraid of something, what is it that causes us anxiety? What causes us anxiety is we are afraid of such and such, or we are afraid of such and such person, or we are afraid of such and such outcome, right? That's what causes fear, or that's what causes anxiety. But at some level, we are also giving that thing a certain level of power, aren't we? Like we're giving a person a certain level of power. We're giving a particular fear a certain level of power because we are ultimately not realizing that Allahu Akbar, that Allah is greater than the thing that I'm afraid of. Allah is greater than whatever outcome I fear. Do you understand how deep that is? That whatever it is that I fear happening, Allah is greater than it. What does that mean practically? Number one, Allah is the one who can prevent it. Number two, Allah is stronger than whatever it is that I fear. If I fear disease, I fear cancer, I fear, something terrible happening to myself or my family, is not Allah greater than that disease? Is Allah not greater than the doctor who doesn't know what they're doing? Or even if they think they do know what they're doing, the surgeon, the medicine, isn't Allah still greater? And the answer is yes, that's what Allahu Akbar is. When I'm afraid of a certain outcome, I'm afraid of loss. So much of our life is fearing loss, right? So much of our life is fearing loss. Do you know the only antidote to the fear of loss is Allahu Akbar? Why? Because what Allahu Akbar means in the face of loss is that even if I lose that thing that I am terrified of losing, I still have Allah. And I want you to think about that. What does that actually mean? I know it's words that are coming out of my mouth right now, but what does it mean in its haqiqah, in its reality? I'll give you guys an example. The people of Gaza, when they are losing everything, not one thing that we're afraid of losing, not the most dearest thing that we're afraid of losing, like a child, maybe more than one child, their family members, sometimes all of their family members, their home, like literally everything. They could lose everything. But do you ever notice that the words coming from them are Allahu Akbar and Alhamdulillah? Do you know what that means in that context? It means that these are a people who actually have internalized that reality. Like, it is a truth, capital T. What I'm speaking to you is a truth, capital T, but we don't all internalize that truth at the same level. Like, let me put it this way. Allahu Akbar is the truth of the universe. Capital T. Allah is greater. But we don't all understand that truth and internalize and live that truth at the same level. And so those who live that truth at a higher level are able to respond differently to the experiences of their life. They experience life differently. Does that make sense? And so how Allahu Akbar plays out in our life is in every aspect. And I just gave the example of anxiety and fear. Fear of loss. See, because the fear of loss is actually what tortures us. It's the fear of loss that tortures us, even before the loss. Do you know this? And there's a lot of neuroscience to this, by the way. There's a lot of research to show this. That we actually get into thinking patterns that are very dysfunctional. Whereas we put our body through trauma, even if the trauma isn't happening. And this is just through our thinking. I'll give you an example. Some of us, and this is, by the way, wired very early in childhood. Some of us, we sort of like practice, or we sort of go through like a dress rehearsal for tragedy. We practice tragedy in our minds. We play the whole thing out. We are the characters in the play. Other people in our life, they play a part. And the whole thing gets practiced in our minds. So it's like a dress rehearsal. It is a entire like reenactment. And guess what happens when we do that? Your body does not know the difference between imagining the tragedy and it happening. This information should be revolutionary for us, transformative for us. Because when we allow our minds, and a lot of this, shaitan plays with us too, but when we allow our minds to play out tragedies and all of our fears and all of these scenarios that we fear, we are actually stressing our body, because we're telling our body that these things are happening. You're like telling your nervous system, there's a lion in the house, when in fact you're just sitting on the couch thinking. And you're completely safe, but your body doesn't know the difference. This is one example that we actually have so much influence over our own state. We have a lot of influence over our own state. And so much of it comes from how we think. When we start to go down that road, because I'm going to repeat this, a lot of these patterns are wired in childhood. These are wired in childhood. And the reason why they are wired that way is because they were necessary for us to stay safe in childhood. It was necessary for us to play out what could happen in an attempt to protect ourselves. And so it became hardwired in our nervous system that this is how we live our lives. We play out every bad scenario that can happen, every bad outcome, in hopes that we can control the outcome. I'll tell you, if you find a person who is very controlling, I will tell you that that is a person who is afraid of feeling their own emotions. It is a person who's actually very uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. It's a person who's actually quite avoidant of emotion. A person who doesn't like to feel their feelings. And so in an attempt to avoid feeling their feelings, they think, if I can only control every aspect, I can control the outcome, and then I never have to feel bad. I never have to feel discomfort. I never have to feel disappointment. I don't have to feel vulnerable. A person who is very controlling is also very, very afraid of vulnerability. Vulnerability is the feeling of disappointment, the feeling of sadness, the feeling of anxiety. Actually, I'll tell you, anxiety is very interesting. Anxiety is actually the opposite of vulnerability in a sense, and I'll explain why. In fact, oftentimes, like, suppressed anger will show up as anxiety.
Is that a start in early childhood?
Absolutely. All of this started in early childhood. All of this did. And that's why, if we really want to talk about, so there's two trajectories here. There's two paths. One is the discussion of healing. One is the discussion of rewiring, right? But then there's another trajectory and there's another discussion, and that is of parenting, so that we can do it differently, right? And right now I'm going to talk about the healing side, but there's another totally different path, which is, I think, equally and if not more important, which is how can we start to do it differently for our children, right? So that they can have the best chance to be healthy in their spiritual life, but also in their mental health. Okay. But when we're talking about control, So a person who is very afraid of feeling uncomfortable, that's vulnerability. The feeling of discomfort, that means that you're vulnerable in those moments. You don't want to have to cry. You don't like to cry. You don't like that feeling. It feels like weakness to you. It feels like weakness to you to cry. It feels like weakness to you to have to be disappointed, to feel like let down, to feel uncomfortable. And so what happens is, as a protective measure, you think, I'm going to control the situation so that I don't have to feel my feelings, so that I don't have to feel bad. I don't have to be weak. And I think that strength comes from control. And I can tell you right now that is an absolute illusion. It's a myth. Because trying to avoid uncomfortable feelings is going to actually cause you more harm. The avoidance, I'll tell you, so the avoidance makes it worse. And what you will find is that you will be in constant anxiety. Anxiety is an interesting sort of state. Anxiety is not a normal state. Now, fear is normal once in a while. Fear. Now, I want you to understand there's a difference between fear and anxiety. Fear is, I am afraid of this intruder who's just broken into my house. That's very normal. If you were not afraid, something's wrong with you. Okay? Something is wrong. I am afraid of my child crossing the street by themselves. Normal. Okay? So fear has a specific thing that you're afraid of. And it is very normal. And fear comes as a protective measure. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the way, few fundamental concepts here. Every emotion that Allah created was created with a purpose. There's no mistakes. Allah didn't make a mistake with fear. Allah didn't make a mistake with anger. Allah didn't make a mistake with sadness. Allah did not make mistakes. So they all serve a purpose. But there is a difference between fear and anxiety. And I'll give you an example of the roots of this, because you asked about childhood. So as a child, let's go back to the origin of our anxiety. As a child, when we feel threatened, it is natural to feel fear, right? So you feel a threat. The child is alone. The child feels fear. The child hears thunder. The child feels fear. So the child sees, maybe like a scary dog. The child feels fear. So that fear is normal. Now, when the child feels that fear, the child then is programmed to look for safety. Where? In the parent, right? The caretaker. So starting from infancy, if the child feels threatened, the child is hungry. I'm talking like a newborn. The child is hungry. The child is gonna do what the child is supposed to do, which is cry, right? The child is now calling out to the parent, looking for safety. Now, what happens when safety doesn't come? What happens when? That's how it comes. So fear is supposed to lead to, calling out for safety, looking for safety. And then if safety comes, the fear is gone. Happens again. Oh, I'm afraid there's a dog. Calling out. Then safety comes, fear is gone. Right? You've picked up the child. You've comforted the child. You've made the child feel safe. But now what happens when the child feels fear, calls out, and is not responded to? Then the child feels fear, calls out, and is not responded to. The child feels fear, calls out, and is not responded to. Any type of threat, and they are asking for safety but not finding safety, then the child learns it's not just one thing that is not safe and I can find safety. The entire world is unsafe. And this is how fear turns to anxiety. Anxiety is a generalized feeling that the world is not safe. It's not just that dog is not safe, but my mom is going to keep me safe. It's not just the thunder is not safe in the moment, but I have my safe place. It is a person who did not have a safe place. They did not have a safe place. And so they learned that there is no safe place and the world is not safe. And that is what we call anxiety. There is no safety. And therefore, we look for ways to find safety. How? Well, by controlling everything. By trying to control everything. I'm going to control the outcome. I'm going to control what this person does. I'm going to control how my kids do this. I'm going to control how my husband or my wife does this. I'm going to control. And the control, that effort to control is really just an effort to find safety. Safety that you learned early on really doesn't exist in this world. And so how do I heal that? How do I heal that? On one level, one of the most powerful antidotes to this phenomenon is Allahu Akbar. Do you understand? Because you are a person who had to learn that there isn't safety. You know what? Safety isn't coming. Safety isn't coming. I'm on my own. I'm on my own. I'm on my own in my pain. I am on my own in my sadness. I'm on my own. See, if you think about in childhood, you take an example of a child who's bullied, a child who's abused. And that child does not have a safe place to go with that pain. That child does not have a safe place to take that pain. And so that child learns, I'm on my own in my pain. I got to deal with it on my own. So many people have experienced terrible things in childhood and literally have told no one. Sometimes I'm the first person they've told. They couldn't go to their own parent. Or some of them went to a parent and the parent was like, well, it's your fault. Or keep your mouth shut, because that's a relative, usually. This is where, you want to understand where anxiety came from. That's where it came from. It didn't come today. It didn't come last year, right? It's not like, you didn't take enough supplements. You know what I'm saying? You're deficient in vitamin C. That's not where it came from. It came from when you were a kid. And there wasn't safety in the times when you felt threatened, when you felt sad, when you felt scared, when you felt humiliated. And so now, fast forward, we're adults now, but that wiring is still there. That programming is still there. And so on the one hand, we have to reprogram, and this is something very possible, by the way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the mind with something called neuroplasticity, which means that the wiring of the nervous system can be rewired. It's moldable. And so basically, the more you practice certain thinking patterns, the more you're building the wiring for that. So it's like hard wiring. Your brain actually has hard wiring. They say that the pathways that fire together, they will actually wire together. So there's actual like hard wiring in the brain. And the more you practice certain thinking patterns, the more you're building the infrastructure in the brain for that. Things like gratitude. The practice of gratitude changes the brain. Okay. The things like not playing out scenarios of tragedy, not practicing how terrible this thing can play out. And actually kind of going through an entire dress rehearsal of it. These things can absolutely change your brain. But ultimately, how powerful is Allahu Akbar? That when I am afraid, because I learned early on that there isn't safety. The ones who were supposed to keep me safe emotionally and physically and everything didn't do their job properly. They didn't keep me safe. There wasn't safety for my emotions. If I came with an emotion, stop crying. It's not a big deal. You're too sensitive. If I showed anger, and this is a big one, especially for women, especially for little girls, is that when a little girl shows anger, especially girls, boys are kind of given more leeway to show anger. But when a little girl shows anger, and I'm not talking about like burning the house down stuff, I'm talking about like normal human emotion, anger. When we are wronged, when we are harmed, when there is injustice, we are supposed to feel anger. This is a design of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why do you think that is? Because anger is a motivator. That's why. Anger motivates action. If I see injustice and I don't feel anything, I'm not motivated to do anything. Right? If I see the injustice happening and I don't feel anything, I don't care, I'm numb to it, then I'm not motivated to take any action. And so anger has its place. Now the problem is when anger is not controlled, when there isn't a regulation of the emotion. And so what I'm discussing right now is emotional health involves emotional regulation. But emotional regulation does not mean emotional suppression. Suppression is not regulation. Suppression is not regulation. You're not regulating your anger because you're just suppressing it. That's like saying that I'm going to digest my food by just letting it sit in my stomach and my intestines. It's not going to get digested. I'm not processing anything and I'm going to get sick. And so most of us were taught to suppress our emotions, especially specific ones. And in the case of anger, usually if a little girl is showing anger, it's like she will be rejected for that. She will be shamed for that. She will be taught very quickly that you're not allowed to do that. You have to keep everybody happy. You have to please everyone else. And you have to keep everyone else appeased. So you better swallow your own anger and swallow your own feelings and your own needs in order to appease everyone else. Your job, especially as a little girl, and especially as the oldest daughter, is to keep everyone else happy. At your expense. Meaning, if you need something, you swallow that and you stay quiet. If you feel something, you swallow that and you stay quiet. If you want to say no, you don't, you say yes. And this is where, people say things like, I have trouble saying no. I hear this a lot from women. I have trouble saying no. Well, guess where that came from? Any guesses? Childhood.
And can you say no to your mom if the mom is making you do certain things, like this is your younger brother or sister and you're supposed to do this as a older sister? And if you don't want to say no.
So good question. Can you say no to like a mother, your mother, or to a parent if they're asking you to do certain things? Well, this is a very good question. And the answer depends on the situation. Okay? But for sure, there needs to be, so we hear this word a lot called boundaries, right? I mean, it's overused. We don't even know what it means, right? Let me just simplify. I want you to imagine you're sitting in your house and your house has walls, right? No house doesn't have walls. It has walls, it has a front door. Your house might have a fence. Your house might even have a security system. Am I right? Now, if someone is intruding, someone is an intruder into your home, what is going to happen is, as soon as they break the boundary, what's the boundary? The fence, the front door, the walls. As soon as they break into the boundary, what gets set off if you have a security system? The alarm. See that alarm? That's anger. Everybody with me? That's anger. So the alarm is anger. The walls and the fence are boundaries. Now, if someone is overstepping, the way that Allah designed us is that there should be an alarm that goes off. And that alarm is called anger. But now imagine that you've been taught to take out the batteries from that alarm. Because anger is not okay ever. You're not even allowed to feel it. You're not allowed to be angry. You're a little girl. Now, if you have permanently taken out the batteries from your alarm, now what happens when someone intrudes and breaks in and oversteps? Absolutely nothing. And guess what happens? People can overstep and intrude and oppress very, very easily and very, very often. Because why? You've taken the batteries out of the alarm, or they've been taken out. You have not replaced them. And second, a lot of people do not have walls in their home. They do not have a front door. They do not have a fence. In other words, they don't have any boundaries. What is a boundary? A boundary is, this is okay, this is not okay. There has to be somewhere where there is a, look, in your home, let's go back to your house. Someone might come and say, why do you have walls in your house? This is rude. I should be able to come whenever I want. Anyone should be able to come whenever I want. This is rude. Where's your adab? Rude, right? It's rude to have walls. Is it rude to close your front door? Is that rude? No, it's necessary. You know, it's necessary to have some boundary because that's what keeps you safe. And so when we live in a dynamic where there's no boundary allowed and there's no batteries in the alarm system, this is the reason we suffer from dhulm, oppression, injustice, because we don't actually know where's the line. We have no line. Now you're going to say, but when I try to close my front door, people don't like it. Well, anybody who wants to intrude into your house doesn't like that you have your door locked. In fact, I'm sure they would prefer for you to keep it wide open because that's easier access for them, isn't it? Do you get it? If someone doesn't like your boundary and it is a fair thing, then that's a sign they want to intrude. So, to answer your question, we have to know, is someone asking me to do something that oversteps the boundary? That's the question. But if we don't even have any walls in our house, if we don't even have a front door, then literally anything goes. That's not good. That's not Islamic. The Prophet ﷺ, there are cases where the companions are being told, like even in the Quran, like knock first. Think about that. Because the Prophet ﷺ also has his space and his boundaries. So the companions are being told, even the Prophet ﷺ has his boundaries and his space and his time with his family. So you need to knock first. Imagine that this is so important, Allah makes it revelation. Understood? So, when we talk about what happens when we are not regulating or processing the emotion, but we're just suppressing it. So in the case of anger, I gave the example of the alarm, right? And what will happen now, I want to go back to that house. If your security alarm system is not working because there's no batteries, and you're sitting inside your house, I want you to just imagine for a second. You're sitting in a house that has no walls, no front door, no fence, and the alarm system has had the batteries taken out. I want you to tell me, how safe are you feeling? What type of emotion do you think you'll be having? What state will you be in sitting in there? Anxiety. Anxiety. So this is a big part of the puzzle of anxiety. It's like, well, I'm of course going to be anxious sitting in a home with no walls, no front door, no fence, and no alarm. And this is why you find that suppressed anger shows up as anxiety. Now, when we talk about how do we fix that, I want to always show you both of these sides, right? On the one hand, it is absolutely the processing of emotion, meaning that we go back to understanding that our anger has a purpose and learning to process it. This is something that you can learn to do. You can get help to learn to do. Your sadness serves a purpose. Your grief needs to be processed in order for it to be released. There are a lot of people who are living with unprocessed grief, unprocessed trauma, unprocessed emotion, pain. It's sitting in your body, literally. And you know, it manifests as illness. I mean, what I'm talking about isn't just like theoretical. It's not, it's somatic. It's somatic, meaning it will show up in your body as chronic illness. It will show up in your body as chronic pain and they can't figure out why. Do you know they found in recent studies that there is a link between suppressed emotion in specific anger and autoimmune disease? Your body is literally screaming out. Like, because you turned off all the alarms, it's just like screaming out. These things have to be addressed. But ultimately, and again, going back to the concept that I began with, which is Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater. How does that heal all of these things? Well, Allah is greater than my fear of disappointing others. Do you know why we become so terrified of disappointing others? Does anyone know? Can you kind of think about why that might be?
Afraid of losing them.
Afraid of losing them? Okay, but it's even deeper than that. So say you lose them, then what? What are we actually afraid of? Loneliness, okay. Abandonment, shame. Ultimately, the reason why we are terrified of disappointing others is because in childhood, it was not safe to disappoint others. Like the consequence of disappointing someone in childhood was severe. What did it look like? The silent treatment, rejection, punishment, shame. You're a terrible daughter. You're a terrible son. You are a terrible human being. I'm surprised you're even still allowed to live on this earth for disappointing me or disappointing so-and-so. How dare you? Are the scum of the earth because you disappointed someone. You understand what that does? That creates a terror. You are terrified of disappointing anyone, from big to small. Okay, I'm not just talking big things, or the smallest things, like anything. Hey, can I have your parking spot? And you really need it. Sure, of course. Take, you want my left arm? You can have that too. Like, as long as you're not disappointed, as long as you're fine, as long as you're happy. Why do we become people pleasers? This is the reason, because it was survival in childhood. You had to please people, or you were not safe, or you would be rejected, or you would be shunned, or you would be punished, or you would be absolutely put down. And you would feel like the scum of the earth, and you never want to feel like that again. And so you've learned that your survival mechanism is keep everyone happy at any cost. Do not disappoint others. Never say no. Never disappoint. And that is a survival mechanism, because you're literally wired to seek safety. And you learn that safety only comes if everybody is pleased. And you never let anyone down. As you can imagine, this is not sustainable. And it will make you sick. And I will come back to illness. It will make you sick. Like, there is data to show this. That these illnesses that we get, these chronic illnesses, these chronic, these strange, fibromyalgia. What is that? What is it? It's like unexplained pain. Inflammation. Just inflammation constantly. This is the nervous system. The nervous system never feeling safe. Okay, so this is so important. And the healing has to involve both the psychological tools that we have of processing emotion, whether that is through therapy, etc. But learning that you can be safe even when someone isn't pleased with you in that moment. Even though you disappointed someone, as long as you are living based on your principles. So this is where boundaries come in, and principle, right? You have to have principles. You have to have boundaries. You have to be like, no, this is my principle, and I will do my best to live by it. And as long as you're living by your principle, even if someone else doesn't like it, you are not going to die. You are going to remain safe. You are still safe as long as you are living by your principles. And this is where deen comes in. Where do we get our principles? Where do we get our principles? From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger. That's where we get our principles. And so as long as we are living by those principles given to us by Allah and his messenger, even when people are not happy with them. Some people don't want you to wear hijab. I'll just give you a simple example. Sometimes a family member doesn't want you to wear hijab. Does it happen? Yes, of course. Maybe the husband doesn't want the hijab. Maybe the parents don't want the hijab. Yes or no? Yes. Okay, this is a perfect example. You're gonna have to disappoint someone. Who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? We're gonna have to disobey someone. Who is it going to be? Is it going to be my parents? Is it going to be my spouse? Is it going to be society? Or is it going to be Allah? We have to understand that there are going to be times where not everyone's going to be happy with our choices. The one who wants me to take off my hijab or not put it on isn't going to be happy with me wearing it. So what do? I have to live by my principles and understand that even when people are disappointed, as long as I'm living by my principles, Allahu Akbar. Makes sense? You're going to have to make difficult decisions in your life. And not everyone's going to be happy with it. I'm sure you understand that. I'm sure you have lots of experience with that. Maybe you're going to become, a teacher instead of a doctor. And someone's not going to be happy with that. Maybe you want to marry so-and-so instead of your cousin, and someone's not going to be happy with that. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you're going to need to get divorced. And someone's not going to be happy with that. And most probably, a lot of people are not going to be happy with that. I can tell you that from experience. But there are decisions that you have to make based on principle. Understand? And it comes back to Allahu Akbar ultimately. Our principles come from Allah and his messenger, and our safety comes ultimately from Allah. our safety. Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater. His opinion of me is greater than all of their opinions combined. And again, as long as I am sticking to the principle, this is not meaning that I am rude or I'm disrespectful or that I overstep, the boundaries myself, you understand? Because a lot of people misunderstand this. It doesn't mean that I become the oppressor. It doesn't mean that I become, disrespectful or rude. No, I have to stick to my principles to the best of my ability. But in so doing, there will be times where I must disappoint someone. And this is Allahu Akbar. This is Allahu Akbar. I'll pause there because I want you to have an opportunity to ask questions, inshallah, or reflections. Subhanakallah wa bihamdaka ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.
You may have to fire somebody.
Because I think I'm gonna have to fire somebody.
I hope not your husband.
She said, hopefully not your husband. One thing I want to add.
Actually, I'm her older sister.
Really?
No.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
One thing I want to add. Let me add one thing, please. This is very important in this discussion. Istikhara. All right? Istikhara. I'm going to add that because you might be like, okay, I have principles. Generally, right? But what about this specific situation, which is not black and white? Like, it's not like, should I drink alcohol? Shouldn't I drink alcohol? It's not that simple. It's not, should I take off my hijab or should I keep it on? Our decisions are not always so black and white. Okay? Look, sometimes they are. I mean, I have sisters coming to me like, my husband's cheating. He's escorts and this and drinking and alcohol. I don't know what to do. Well, those are little, sometimes it's pretty clear, but we still, it's like we avoid the obvious. We avoid the obvious. So I will say some decisions are more clear than others, but not all of them are. Okay? Not many of them are not. So now the question is, how do I live by my principles when I am literally a blind human being? I don't know anything about the future. I don't know anything of the unseen. I am Bani Adam. I'm a human being. I'm so limited. So limited. So now what? I feel afraid because I don't know. Am I making the right decision? Am I making the right decision or am I not? And this is where we come back to istikhara and isti'ana, which means we are asking Allah to direct us. We are not trying to direct ourselves. This is very important. Living according to our principles and making difficult decisions and taking action when necessary must coincide with istikhara and isti'ana, which is to seek help and guidance from Allah and to ask Allah to direct us and not to try to direct ourselves. Don't try to direct yourself or you will crash. And no matter what decision you make, if you direct yourself, you will always second guess. Always. You'll always say, but if only, had I not, yeah. That always happens because you directed yourself.
Okay, if we did istikhara.
So you do istikhara. So I'll come to that. So if you don't try to direct yourself, but ask Allah to direct. So you are seeking help from Allah. You are constantly begging for guidance from Allah. Ya Allah, I do not want to try to drive this ship. I will crash. I don't know anything. I am blind. I don't know. I am human. Literally, this is the beginning of istikhara, by the way. Read the istikhara translation, the dua translation. The entire introduction is, I don't know anything. It's like, I know nothing. I'm not able to do nothing. I can't, it's acknowledging our humanness and our weakness and our desperation and our need for Allah. It's like Allahumma inni astakhiru bi'ilmika wastaqdiruka biqudratik was'aluka min fadlika 'azim fa innaka taqdiru wa la aqdir. You are able and I'm not able. إنك تعلم ولا أعلم. You know and I don't know. You understand? So we have to acknowledge that, right? And so if you do not attempt to direct yourself, right? And you instead ask Allah to direct you, guidance, isti'ana, asking for guidance, then whatever decision you make, you will never second guess it. You will never go back and say, trust me, I've made very difficult decisions in my life. Never once second guessed it. Never. Like certain decisions. As long as those decisions were made properly. If they were not made properly, I will torture myself with the what ifs. If only that, if only this, if only this. Which, by the way, the Prophet ﷺ says is the door of amal al-shaytan, the work of shaitan. The if onlys. The if, but, if only this, if only that, the what ifs. That's shaitan playing with you. And we do not play that game with shaitan. We say, قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ مَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. Allah has decreed, and whatever Allah wills, He does. This is very important. But how can we get to that point? We got to make decisions properly. We got to take steps properly. We don't try to drive this ship. We're going to crash. You understand? You're blindfolded. You don't know how to drive. It's like a 2-year-old giving them the keys to the car. You already know what's going to happen. Okay? And put a blindfold on them. They're 2. They never knew how to drive. And they have a blindfold on them. Do you understand? إِنَّكَ تَقْدِرُ وَلَا أَقْدِرُ. You're able. I'm not able. I don't know how to drive. تَعْلَمُ وَلَا أَعْلَمُ. You know. I don't know. I'm blindfolded. Got it? Okay. Istikhara is to ask Allah to direct what is happening. Istikhara is not necessarily about a dream. Istikhara is not necessarily about a feeling. We have all sorts of feelings. Okay? We can have all sorts of feelings. Look, you really want that job. So your feeling is, I want the job. But the job's not good for you. Well, you might still feel like you want the job, but it's not good for you. You might really be emotionally attached to an individual and you really want to marry them. This happens a lot, right? And that person's not good for you. That person's not good for you. So you might be like, but I feel. Well, that's great. You feel. But we feel all sorts of things. Oh, but I had a dream. Well, your dream could be because of what you ate for dinner. Literally. I dreamt of ice cream. Their name begins with I. Let's go for it. That's my istikhara there. That's my answer. That's not how istikhara works. It's not, istikhara is not like you're asking a fortune teller, it's like a magic ball. That's not how istikhara works. If you study istikhara, study the dua of istikhara, do you know what you're saying? I'll tell you something fascinating. Nowhere in the dua do you say, give me a feeling. You don't say it. Like, you don't say it. You know what else you don't say? Give me a sign. You never say that. Like, it's not in the dua. Are you with me? It's not in the dua. There's nowhere that says, oh, Ya Allah, give me a sign. That's so weird because it's like, what do you think? Like, it's like we're not prophets. We're not getting wahi from Allah. Like, we're not getting revelation from Allah. So you see a sign. Okay, for you want to marry that person. You see the dog crossing the street. You think that's a sign. Because you're like, that's what I'm looking for. Oh my God, dog begins with D. Their name is Dawood. You know what I mean? It's like I saw the dog, I saw the sign. It's just, that's not istikhara. It's not I saw a feeling, I saw a dream, or I felt a feeling, I saw a sign.
Or some people see a color.
A color. Wow. Okay. None of the above. What is istikhara? So we can just clarify. Istikhara, go back to what you're asking. فَقْدِرْهُ لِي وَيَسِّرْهُ لِي ثُمَّ بَارِكْ لِي فِي. You're saying, if this is good for me, my dunya, my akhirah, make it happen, make it easy, and put blessing in it. Where's the dream? Where's the sign? Where's the feeling? Nowhere. It's what happens. And then finally, if it's not good for me, take it away from me and take me away from it. So istikhara is about what Allah does.
So if it doesn't take it away from you, then it's good?
Not necessarily. You have to see where it's going. So it's about letting go of the steering wheel, and I'm going to end with this because we have to go for salah. It's about letting go of the steering wheel and the illusion of control. Guys, illusion of control is a big one here. Letting go of the steering wheel. I am not driving this ship because I don't know nothing. I am a 2-year-old with a blindfold. Okay? And it's allowing Allah to steer the situation.
So it can be good, bad for dunya, but good for akhirah.
Well, you're asking for actually both. No, you're asking for both. You're saying خَيْرٌ لِي فِي دِينِي وَمَعَاشِ وَعَاقِبَةِ أَمْرِي. You're asking for good in dunya and akhirah. Okay? سبحانك الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.